The meeting because we okay.
Good to go.
All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item, any public comments for items not on the agenda, and this would be for discussion, not action. Any such comments? All right, seeing none. Moving on to town reports. Vika?
All right, good evening, everybody. The first thing is the town administrator report. There is also a public works report and a transfer station report in there as well. Under the TA report, there's quite a few little things to mention. Hopefully, none of them will take up too much time. So the first thing, as always, it's been on the agenda for the last several months, and that is that the town is in need of planning board and board of adjustment appeals applicants specifically. We have received a couple applications, and the board will have those to discuss in executive session. Unfortunately, both of these committees have specific requirements of who can and cannot serve, and so that is going to have an implication on whether the board is or isn't going to be able to appoint some of these members, but still don't want that to defer people. If anyone's interested on being on the planning board or board of adjustment appeals, or a couple other boards that we have, but preferably those two, please submit an application. Both of those boards have some significant work ahead of them due to some anticipated and planned hearings and discussions that they're going to have relative to shoreline stabilization projects, to town wanting to add some parking spaces in certain areas, to the library one in addition. So there is a lot going on that is going to require work from those committees. Currently, there's only 3 board members on each. So unless all 3 of those board members can meet, it really creates a difficult time for them to be able to come up with the appropriate times to meet and be able to do that in line with a lot of requirements. So if anyone's interested, please let us know, and then we will bring that up in front of the board. Town meeting is coming up this Saturday at 9 a.m. right here, followed by town election, which will be on Tuesday, also here from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. David?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention also that there are 2 openings on the school committee, which are on the ballot. And so we don't know if we have anybody interested, but spread the word. We need to fill those seats.
We do have one person for the school committee that showed interest, and so once they confirm that they want to run, when people are coming in for town meeting or at town meeting on Saturday or election. So town meeting on Saturday, they will have an opportunity to stand up and kind of cast their vote for a write-in if they're interested, and then we will definitely let people know on Tuesday if there are write-ins that people are interested in, so we'll make sure to spread that word. Select board meetings during the summer. Historically, the select board right about this time would decide to typically move to one meeting, one select board meeting for meetings such as this one. One in July and one in August, recognizing that it's a busy time for all. I think this municipality is busier than it's ever been, requiring a lot of additional visits and hearings and workshops. And so I want to bring it to the board's attention to see if you do want to move to one select board meeting a month for regular business, if you want to keep it at 2, and what the board's take on that was.
Thoughts?
Could we leave it as a goal to have 1 per month and add another one as needed? Just a thought.
Carol?
Yeah, I think we went through this last year. Personally, I think we need to meet at least twice a month. I would be open to changing one of those meetings to a different time, like a weekday morning, or, with prior notice, I could do that. But I think we need more, with all that we have going on, I think we need more than 1 meeting a month.
And I agree with that, at least as far as the meeting every 2 weeks. Whether we do it at a different time or not, that might be a nice change of pace.
So maybe whoever is working with Vika to set the agenda as they look at the items on Wednesday and Thursday, when that discussion starts, the Wednesday or Thursday before a Wednesday meeting. If they wind up with no items that have the necessary documents or contracts or whatever, they could call one off at the last minute, but as long as there were things that needed to be taken care of, go ahead with the regular schedule, and then after you have the new board, maybe you can talk about alternate dates.
And I would agree to having 2 in 1 month and possibly 2 in, I would prefer July and 1 in August, and in part because it's access for summer residents to be at a select board meeting.
So we'll just keep it as is for now and then play it by ear as long as there is enough appropriate required notice to the public.
Sounds like,
Good.
Planning board hearing, so on June 9th, next week, there is going to be a planning board hearing. They will be hearing 3 different applications. These are hearings that the planning board has received applications for to shoreline stabilization. In addition at the library, notices to all the butters have gone out. Twice we've posted it in the newspaper, and so if you are in a butter within a certain square footage of the property, you would have received notices. So chances are some of you in the audience probably have a notice for at least one of those. So if you're interested, the information is on the town website as far as what they're going to be hearing. And if you're interested in hearing about it or what the outcome is, or have a comment, then you're welcome to come to the meeting on June 9th. Plovers on Jenks Beach is the next topic. So on May 28th, a nest was discovered on Jenks Beach. The town was automatically in contact with the Audubon and the state to get a better understanding what the town's role was and what the role of the property owner was, whose property ultimately the protected birds were on. Texts went out, the residents were notified, the Audubon is who came and staked out the space. The Audubon is also who blocked off the entranceway that is to the left, that is on private property. The town at that point took the direction of what was recommended by the Audubon based on what the state and federal regulations and requirements are around the federally protected birds. And at that point, it was suggested that all dogs be leashed to the right of the beach and no dogs to the left of the beach where the actual nest with, at that point, it was 2 eggs. I'm not sure if there's more or not. And so since then, that really has created quite an uproar within the town, and a lot of different communications going back and forth, a lot of confusion amongst the Sheboygan Cumberland Land Trust and Indian Island. I have been in contact with Audubon directly and have received feedback from Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. What we've done were the right steps and are the steps that are still recommended. If the select board wants to take a direction heavier to that, would really be your only option, but there are limitations in terms of how much you can or cannot follow based on what the requirements are set and recommendations made by the Audubon and the state officials. And so I'm happy to answer any more questions to the board. I'm happy to answer any other questions that anybody else might have, but ultimately I'm looking some feedback from the select board if there is an additional message that you're looking to send out. What I'm kind of hoping for support from you is really add more signage and really advertise a lot more, because there still seems to be a lot of controversy and confusion about the road being blocked, whether fishermen have access, whether the town has limited access to the fishermen. And so I think it would be great for the town to put out a statement on the behalf of the town, explaining a little bit about what the situation is and what the process is. At the end of the day, these are state and federal laws. And there are very significant consequences that can go to anybody that is gonna harm or could harm these birds. And I would hate to see somebody intentionally or unintentionally do something that could potentially lead to significant repercussion. There was a case last year in Biddeford where a dog that was on a leash killed a plover, and the repercussions of how that person was handled by the community, but also everything that came within it was to the point that that resident ended up leaving the state entirely. And so I want to make sure that people understand the significance of why a decision has to be taken for the level of protection, but also make sure that the board has an opportunity to weigh in their opinion on it as well.
So comments, questions from the board? Thoughts? Eliza and then Carol?
So heading down the road, it's leash, no dogs to the left, and leash dogs only to the right. And I agree with needing more signage, because I was there one time in the evening and someone came up the road from Colvin Cove with a leash dog and hadn't seen signage. So my first question is that acceptable with the Audubon?
I spoke to the leading individual at Audubon, who was here on Friday, who played a role in the staking out, who had individual conversation with the fishermen who use that facility directly, and her recommendation is that one of two things: either no dogs across Coleman Cove and Jenks area entirely, or their recommendation is when you get down to Jenks, to the left where the nest is, no dogs there, to the right, as long as they're on a leash.
And is there any recommendation about how far down the leashed dogs are? Does it go all the way to Colvin's? We should have a point at which, I think that should be clear, like leash dogs from here to this point, and then it's.
Well, and that's, I didn't want to make the staff go through and create all those signs or have the Audubon provide and coordinate all of that if, for example, the board said, let's just do no dogs altogether, and then us have to kind of, which for now, we went with the recommendation of what the Audubon is recommending on their level, but if the board wants to do something different, then it is ultimately
Thank you.
for you to determine.
I like the idea of having a point of the beach towards Coleman Cove, from this point on, dogs on a leash. So,
Like 100 yards?
I don't know.
100 feet from the Coleman.
Okay, I'm gonna think about it.
Okay. Carol, you had a comment?
I think it would be helpful to, send out a notice or post it on the website.
Can't hear.
I think it would be helpful for the town to post a notice on the website explaining what you just explained, that the birds were discovered recently. Maine Audubon came out, staked to the area, blocked off the access, recommends, minimal sort of interaction with the birds, just like other places on the island, so that it's clear to people that that's a recommendation of, the Audubon Society. The question I have is, are there, there are people driving down there on the beachfront and also loading traps, and did they have any suggestions or opinion about that being disruptive to the birds?
Yes, so in addition to just the basics, there were two other concerns that I raised. One is the fishermen and the access, and whether their limitation was somehow, whether they were limited, and then next week's stabilization project discussion for the planning board, and whether the planning board needs to have any information relative to now having a federally protected bird in the area of where that discussion is going to take place. So relative to the fishermen, the Audubon spoke individually with the fishermen that use that facility and granted them permission to still be able to have access through the town right away, not to the left, through the town right away, to unload their gear, recognizing that by the time the birds hatch, their goal is to not be there anymore and their gear will already be in the water. Also recognizing that this is their livelihood, that there is a haul off literally right next to the nest. So really trying to support the fishermen and make sure that their job could still be done and not impacted. So they were given that permission by Audubon. I think the other question is, there has been some evidence that maybe people in ATVs who are not related to being a fisherman accessing the facility are now accessing that area or continue to access that area, which could maybe lead to a discussion in the parking and traffic ordinance if you want to limit vehicle accesses unless it's a fisherman operation or something like that. So that's a decision for a board to discuss and make, but for now, the fishermen can access and can unload their traps, being mindful of the blocked off area.
And then the other thing is, I've seen signs that Maine Audubon, for example, has, I think, supplied or came from them. And so I do agree with comments that we should have more signage. It's a little, we're gonna have to install signposts because there isn't much to attach them to down there. But
Yes.
I think it's important to put as much signage out there as we can. And maybe at town meeting, which is Saturday, we could have a handout about the plovers, and that kind of saves the mailing, but at the same time, I think, and even maybe I'd be happy to put it together, a map of what areas are sort of restricted for what. And personally, I would be in favor of prohibiting vehicle traffic except for commercial fishermen, you know, for the time being. I don't know if that's appropriate to do tonight when we take up the traffic ordinance, but personally, I think that would be a good idea. So I think we should take advantage of town meeting to maybe get the word out in a written format that we can hand out and then post it on the website. And whatever Maine Audubon can do to help us with signage or whatever's available, I assume Fish and Wildlife can also maybe provide.
Yeah, they're all happy to help us. One thing that was provided to me and recommended to me that if Audubon is ready and willing to support the town in any way, if it helps to have professionals come out and have like a meeting at the hall or at the rec center or something where anybody can come and questions are asked and answers are provided to ultimately educate people that no one's trying to stop anybody from doing anything. It's a federally protected bird that municipally, wherever they land, people are going to be impacted, but it's temporary. As long as we leave them alone, they'll leave and nothing will happen. The big thing that she stressed to me was that if something were to happen, if these birds were to be hurt, an investigation will be opened up, photos would be collected, proof will be collected, and people could literally end up in prison as a result of it. And there's been enough evidence that people are going there, kind of congregating around the area, that we really want to try to avoid people from putting themselves in that position of potentially making that one bad mistake that could, you know, change their life in the direction that they never anticipated. And so Audubon is happy to provide somebody out here for that. They're also happy to provide signage and any other assistance. They are crazy busy right now because Shebig is not the only town. I mean, we just got confirmation that there's now 4 nests on Shebig, which that's huge. I mean, luckily 3 of them are on Indian Island, so they've been in this process for a couple of years. They have a little bit more knowledge of it, but yeah, I think we can utilize and ask Audubon to help us in any way.
Yeah, and I would totally support having Audubon come out and do a public education program on plovers. I mean, I think that's a great idea. So whatever would make sense
Yeah,
to.
I'm happy if the
schedule
board
that.
is in support of that. I told her that chances are I will, one way or another, reach out to her after the fact. And if it's to have somebody come out, then I don't think she'd be surprised if that's the direction. I think they would actually be happy to provide that.
I like all these ideas. I like especially keeping non-commercial traffic off the beach. I don't know if that can be addressed here or in the parking ordinance. Not just for the plovers, but for general.
Let's decide when we get to parking ordinance.
Yeah, it'd be great to add it to this plover.
Okay, Gladys.
2 questions. Do we have an ETA for the fledging? Do we have an approximate idea?
So I
Late
believe
July.
end of July is the anticipated time relative to the ones that are at the hook.
Okay,
These guys, what Audubon explained to me, they're a little delayed by a couple of weeks. So
Right.
chances are they nested somewhere else, they got spooked or they had to flee, which is why they ended up at Jenks, because their time frame of laying is a couple of weeks behind.
Yeah.
Which ultimately is probably gonna lead them to be a couple of weeks behind and
So it could be
fleeing.
late July, early August.
right. Okay, so do they have the 4 eggs yet?
Yes.
They do.
At Jenks?
That's good.
What was your question?
Are the 4 eggs in the nest yet?
I don't,
Okay.
at Jenks there are 4 nests already?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, since last Thursday, there were 2 and now there are 4.
That's a good sign. I have one other question. People go down there for sitting at the beach. So how is that, I'm assuming that if there are a lot of people on the beach, that would be an issue as well. So I really want to not just have dogs on leashes and allow access for fishermen, but if people are going down to the beach there, I would like to see, unless it's not approved by Audubon, can people go further down the beach? Can we say no beach gathering within this area? I know that it's not as big a beach as the Hook, but I would assume that could easily upset the plovers.
I
Is this an
think
Audubon
I would
question?
recommend through the education and maybe through the flyer at the town meeting.
Okay.
Premise that the more congregated the area and the busier it is, the more agitated they are. So one thing is drones and things like that.
Yeah, I saw that some.
Anticipated as a threat.
Yeah.
And so that gets the parents agitated, and all those little steps could potentially lead to not a full-fledged, but through education, I think would.
I think we need to consider that as well.
Yeah, if a sign said, if a sign right at the access road said, please congregate this way, please avoid this area, something like that.
Yeah.
Other comments from the board? Okay, comments from the public, anybody? Lila and then Jackie, and please step forward, please step up to the little green X.
These are very delicate little birds.
Lila, if you stand on the green X on the floor, then
Behind you a little bit.
people can see you.
Oh, there, X marks the spot.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, these are very delicate, tiny little birds. It is difficult even for people who are trained in seeing them to actually see them at first. The area that has been turned into an exclosure by Audubon with permission from the property owners is regularly being invaded, let me put it that way, by people going along the beach, either by lack of understanding or out of malicious curiosity. These birds become extremely agitated when people come right up to the nesting area. And no one wants to agitate them because they are parents trying to incubate a little nest. All of these things can be part and need to be part very soon of information for the public. Not having vehicles on the beach is something that fishermen are very sensitive about and have been very accommodating about how they access their boats. I have learned myself that it's a danger just to have ruts on the beach for the little fledglings because they can end up getting caught in those ruts on the beach. So we have a lot to learn, and it's exciting that we've got these plovers that love to be here, and I'm sure we can coexist as long as information is clearly out there. And I agree with the suggestion that the area needs to be staked more widely to keep people away from coming over the next. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I was present while the discussions took place with the fishermen, and I'm very happy to say that it was Gary Ross who first identified the plovers. He picked them up on his Merlin app, and we owe him a lot for being a wonderful ambassador for the public, to the community,
Thanks, Lon.
for the plovers too.
At the hook, are any dogs allowed?
No.
In the context of the plovers,
In the concept.
there's a limitation during plover season. Dogs are allowed at the hook in February.
Well, yes, but I meant during the context of the plovers.
There are restrictions there as well. Also recommended by Audubon and I believe supported by CCL. Yeah, CCLT had postings on their website, so yes.
Yes, they made a decision collectively to have no dogs allowed entirely on the beach during that time frame.
The reason I was asking the question is that I would support, well, I was gonna say no dogs on on both sides. Whether dogs are allowed, over in front of Coleman's is, dogs sometimes
Take off, yeah.
get off their leash.
Thank you.
And don't read Anthony's signs.
Other public comments on this topic? Questions? Okay, so back to the board. Oh, sorry, John, yeah.
Can you build the Audubon, can you build a nesting area for it? I'm just curious.
No,
They don't go to
No.
elevated or protected?
They nest on the ground.
Because I just think about like coyotes and other stuff, because,
they nest
yeah,
on the sand.
no, they're smart. Okay.
So, any other comments from the board? I think we have a collection of ideas. Do you have a?
Yeah, can I just recount, just to make sure that we're all on the same
Sure,
page?
sure.
So I'm gonna reach out to the Audubon. I'm gonna ask that they provide us some dates that they can come out here for an educational session. We will come up with a flyer. There is information on the town website already, but we will work with the Audubon and come up with a flyer for informational session. We will get more signage. We will stake out town right away, to the left, no dogs. We'll probably veer off to the right a little bit and have some signs there that say no dogs beyond this point. So anyone coming from Coleman's Cove, when they get to that sign on the beach, hopefully will respect it and not keep going beyond that point. I think
we
that.
may talk about vehicles under the traffic ordinance.
Yeah, so, and I guess that's one other thing that I would like to mention. Under the parking and traffic ordinance, I am gonna bring forth a recommendation for this area and another area about how to handle with a similar issue, other issue. And then within the public notice, I do wanna try to stress that all these recommendations, including the blocking of the path, was done so by the Audubon, because I do think that it's important that the town takes the stand in supporting the residents who are so inconveniently stuck with having these wonderful little birds in front of their property ultimately have created some concerns and issues for them with the assumptions that were made as to who and why the area was blocked. And so does that sound okay to the board? All right, thank you.
Good, okay. All right, so Vika, back to you.
South Shore Drive workshop. So last meeting, the board was provided with a proposal that South Shore Drive, GEI had provided relative to South Shore Drive stabilization project. They have committed and can come to the island on June 25th at 6 p.m. to do a public workshop presentation similar to what was done a number of months ago about Bennett's Cove study that they had done. And so the information is going to be presented by the individuals who worked at GEI to provide that. And so I just wanted to, we have it on the town website, the board was okay with the date, and so that's the plan for that. After that, the board will have the discussion in front of them again in terms of having a decision to be made as far as how you want to proceed going forward with that particular project. Excuse me, Hook Road and Jenks Road parking. So both of these locations, the town has actively over the course of last several years have been working with abutters, our residents in the area, to come up with some alternative parking solutions, ultimately a result of different storms destroying what had historically been there. The town is working with GEI to have GEI have those drawings, and basically the information that we can present to the planning board, they will have to go to a planning board for a site plan review. Similar to these planning board meetings, abutters will be notified, notices will be sent. Any person who wants an opportunity to speak for or against these proposed projects by the town will be able to have their input. So that's what I had written on the TA report. One other thing that I do want to mention that has taken up majority of my time in the last week is relative to some emergency repair work down at Bennett's Cove. And it is something that we have been attempting to do. So the area, there are several different issues, as people are aware, but there is a culvert that is on town property that is ultimately clogged and impassable due to the storms for 2024 damages. It is full, and that is causing a wash-off right into where the barge comes in, and that has created significant washout of the material that was there down to clay material. Causing the barge to have a difficult time with vehicles coming and going, and ultimately creating significant damage to the area. And so the town has been in contact with DEP, with the Department of Inland and Fisheries and Wildlife, and with the Maine Geological Survey, because in the last year, there have been some changes made to permits by rule that have now put us in a position where we are required to have all of these parties involved and submit applications to all of them, so we can, what appears to be a simple fix, put some material in that area above the high tide watermark to try to fix the issue that has been created as a result. And so that information has been filled out. I had after several back and forths, had a conversation with Rob Wood today. The town did get a verbal followed up by a written permission that the town has the right to put less than 10 cubic yards of material in the area where it is washed out. And the steps that the town is taking is, we have filled out the paperwork. Part of this is something new within the last year where for a permit by rule, every abutter within 1,000 feet has to be notified that an application is going to be submitted to the state. Then there is a window. It's no longer you submitted 14 days. It's a lot more extensive than that. Rob did let me know that in 2 weeks, that rule is going to be changing, and asked me if the town is in the position to wait. I don't think we should wait 2 weeks just to avoid sending out notices to abutters. I don't want to appear like we're trying to hide anything. We have compiled the notices. We will be putting them in the mail tomorrow. All of the information has been, I did reach out to GEI just to have Lisa help me through the process. I don't think as a town administrator, I am a coastal engineer who should be filling out a lot of these applications. And so having her expertise was valuable to me in making sure we don't put the town in a position that's going to hurt us. And so that will go out to the abutters tomorrow. In the meantime, all of the information has been provided to the state officials. We have gotten the go-ahead to go ahead and do this. And they know that we are going to be doing this. The plan is that tomorrow we are going to have the Public Works physically pump out the water out of the hole. Once that is pumped out, then the Public Works crew will use material that has been approved by DEP and confirmed we can use it and fill that area. It's not going to go beyond the high tide watermark. It's going to stay right within the damaged area. And then I will be there for all of it to make sure that it is done based on how I stated to DEP was going to be done and based on the applications as they were submitted. So that will be done. It's a temporary solution because in the meantime, we have reached out to DEP to help us properly resolve the culvert work. And they're also very aware that we are in the process of doing that, and that they will be expecting additional communication and documentation from us in the future. And then at that point, the rule will be changed, so only immediate abutters that are touching the area will be notified. So if there's any confusion between who gets these notices this week and who will get them for the future culvert work, it's simply because the rules have been changed. So that's that.
Comments from the board, questions? Carol?
So do I understand correctly, you're doing sort of beach replenishment in the barge off-ramp area?
Correct.
Then you're also gonna pump out the area that's plugged in the upper part of the culvert, but if we get more rain, are you just gonna go back, or what's
The goal is right now to pump it out. If we're able to unclog it once it's pumped out, the Public Works crew will attempt to do that. The suspicion and assumption is that it is so clogged by a lot of the material from the beach and the road from that 2024 storm that it might not be possible without doing damage to the culvert or the road or anything like that. But an attempt will be made to try to unclog it just to make it so some water is going through it, and hopefully that could sustain it until we can properly replace the culvert.
And what's happening on the culvert side? Who is kind of working on that, and is that?
All the information that GEI needs has been provided to them, and so I am just waiting on Lisa to provide me, this is our proposal, this is how much it would cost the town, and this is, whether our crew can do it or not. So they have what they need. It's just a matter of waiting to receive something back from them.
And they're doing that work under that general assistance contract?
Yes, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and so with that, though, it's a little different because I now have the ability to contact them and ask them to do this and then present you the scope of work, and you decide whether you want to proceed with it, so.
Other comments?
And what's the status of the culvert across the road connecting those two wet areas.
That's-
I'm not sure I'm following you.
She's
There's
talking about
one,
the
There was,
discussed, not proposed.
there's,
The culvert that's been discussed that would go across. the
Across.
road.
that was a suggestion at the beginning. It is not anything that is possible due to a number of reasons, which is why GEI is basically working to do it within the town right away in a way where it's not going into a wetland or anything that is going to potentially make things worse or have a negative impact on anything and anybody.
got it, thank you.
Other questions from the board? on that
Clarify
topic?
the question I had.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the public? Mark?
Lisa, would you mind if I reported quickly on our discussion on the plan?
Sure.
Speaker and I met down at Chandler's Cove Float yesterday afternoon with Coley Mulkern, the owner of Vinyl Plant, and his son. And the topic was the issues at Venice Cove. And I believe when we left that meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, Plant was going to see if they could come up with a similar amount of concrete planks that they had, they don't have them presently in hand, to possibly present to the town for consideration. Is that accurate in your opinion?
Yep, that was a result of the board asking from last year. We find out whether they could do it, how much it would be, and,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I know this is an unpopular statement to some, being that I grew up down in that neighborhood, but I believe that a hardscape system down there, whether it's on top of the ground for 7 months out of a year or underground by permit for all permanent, is ultimately going to be the best solution for traveling back and forth across there and unloading. And I'm glad that the DEP is letting you do something down there temporarily, but I'm afraid it's gonna just add to the soft mess down there, and I'm hoping that I'm incorrect. But that was the gist of the conversation, and I thought that Plant was pretty understanding of the situation, and they've been obviously delivering and taking care of our contract for our solid waste. So that's my main concern, quite frankly, as you all know, without insulting contractors or homeowners, is the transfer station. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Other comments, questions from the public on that topic? Okay. Is that all you got, Vika?
Yes.
All right. One other topic for report that Vika and I discussed briefly before the meeting. I noticed yesterday that the replanking has begun down at Chandler's Cove. And stopped and chatted with the guys, thanked them for it, asked if they had any idea how long it would take. They did not. But I will note that at the town office, and then just rhetorically, by all accounts I've heard, the public has had nothing but high marks for the manner in which that contractor has been going out of their way to help everybody who has business to transact down there, whether it's a homeowner, people moving their things up for the summer, contractors. I have experienced them picking up a pallet of material on their equipment and moving it up to my truck and loading it for me. So that's just good news that we've got a contractor like that working on that project. And for me, great news that those planks are finally being replaced. After, obviously, the pilings have all not been replaced, but the next step is the planks. And if that's done in a month, if that's done in 2 weeks, if that's done in 3 months, whenever they get done, it'll be nice to have that finished. So, thought I'd throw that into the TA's report. Carol.
I just want to remind all of us that we should be submitting a SHIP grant application for the half of the piling cost at some point. And now I don't know when, I think the fiscal year changes at the end of June. So we may just want to wait till the next fiscal year. I just don't want to forget about that because it's like $50,000.
Carol, we can't hear.
Oh, sorry, I'll try to speak louder. I was just saying that there's a program through the Department of Transportation where they will reimburse us potentially for half of the cost of the pilings, which Bob just mentioned, which are, the cost of the town is about $90,000, so we do want to apply for the 50% reimbursement.
I'll put that on the list of future agenda items for the new board.
And can I just ask a couple quick questions? So Pete, I was just wondering if you could give us an update on where the audit's at and any word from FEMA.
Yes, I've been in several communications with the auditors. Communication has definitely been an issue. Andrew was working on providing them a few things to kind of wrap things up. Last week when I point blank asked, can you give me a date? They couldn't give me a date, but they kind of referenced this month, which I would hope would be the case. And they are starting the process through the process that they went through this year, really changing the process. They are starting it already for fiscal year 25 audit. And so I'm hoping that we don't repeat the same issue. And if we do, I will be coming forth to the board, possibly looking for a new auditor.
Do we know if the situation relative to availability of auditors is the same now as it was 2 years ago?
I have not looked into it. I have not taken the time to look into it.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and I think, speaking for myself as a board member, I may just want to evaluate, or have the board evaluate alternative. I wouldn't go, we haven't approved the contract for fiscal year 25, have we?
For the auditor.
There is usually like a commitment letter that gets signed, but
Have we done that?
no.
Okay, I think before we do that, the board needs to kind of consider whether we should be changing contract, service providers for that.
Yeah, at least considering it, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
And FEMA, I did have I think it was last week, maybe the week before, it was definitely in between these two meetings, a meeting with FEMA and MEMA. We are officially 100% closed with our work with FEMA, which is great news. MEMA is now fully in control of our quote-unquote cases, which means that they have requested the money from FEMA, and they had initially told me that we would receive the funds towards the end of May, but when I was on the phone with them and I asked them, they said that it's most likely going to be a couple of weeks. So based on any freezes that President Trump may or may not do in the time being, I was told that because of where we stand with having things be finished with FEMA, that there should be no reason why the funds that we were stated we were going to be obligated with shouldn't be obligated to us. So in a matter of a couple of weeks, hopefully we'll have about $1.23 million coming our way.
It's certainly, first off, thank you for your persistence. And having that meeting on June 25th on South Shore Drive, it sure would be great to have it locked in,
I think
ready.
knowing whether there is $700,000 and plus that could be used towards the work for South Shore Drive will have a big impact on what the decision this board can or cannot make, or should or shouldn't make, yeah.
All right. Okay, moving on. Item 4, public hearing for special amusements and victualler licenses. Okay.
So this is something that the town has a special amusement and a victualler license, two different ordinances that we go through every single year. This year, there is conversation between the code enforcement officer, the fire chief, and myself to try to implement and recommend some changes to improve it, because it's not always the smoothest process. So these are 4 out of the 5 that typically come to you. The one that's not on here is the Shebig Niblick, which the fire chief said was not ready to be, what's the word I'm looking for, inspected, thank you. I did ask him to inspect it and have the license to me by today with any pending information, but I did not receive anything. And so the position that puts things in slightly is that they are going to be opening the day of the next meeting. And so I would encourage the board potentially still, when you do take the action, that maybe add them to the list of moving forward. So then we're not breaking our own ordinance pending on a proper passing inspection. But, you know, like I said, I don't have the information in front of you from the fire chief on that particular location. All the other ones, some needed revisits, but we received the paperwork, everything passed from the fire chief to feel comfortable to proceed to get these passed.
So I think I would just add, as I understand it, with the way the process is currently designed, the chief's objection to proceeding with the inspection at the Niblick was based on the fact that all of their goods and services are not yet in the place that they will be when they're doing business, which is different for me from saying fire safety equipment is not in place. It's two different things. And again, there are conversations ongoing to try to streamline this process. But when we get back into business item 5, we can talk about what we want to do, if anything, about that 5th application. So in terms of the public hearing, I don't think we're required to read each of the applications, just to accept comments.
No, I mean, in the past, you never even received anything, and so I think there's room for, I mean, this is something on a municipal level, not anything the state requires, so there is a lot of room for the municipality to really implement how they handle this. The one challenge that we've started running into the last 2 years is the applications are through May 31st. And so annually they expire on May 31st. And so we really should have them renewed. A lot of, or some of these, you know, like the inn, Slow Bell, the dates of opening might not necessarily reflect those dates of the operating. And so having that flexibility plays a key in it. If the facility chooses to open a month later, they might not have everything in place, you know, fire safety and things like that, quite ready for that inspection, which is what has caused a delay this particular year.
So the items were in the packet. I'm sure everybody had a chance to read them. Carol, you have a comment or question?
Maybe I missed it, but, I mean, I did see the fire prevention and code enforcement inspection.
Right.
But I thought with the special amusement permit, there was another application that specified like hours open, and I thought historically we've had, maybe I'm wrong.
Liquor license has a lot of that detail.
Oh,
and
maybe
there's
that's
the-
what it was.
Yeah, so there is the Shebig Island Inn and the Slow Beller, the two entities that you will have liquor licenses in front of you with a lot of the details of their hours of operation, what their revenue is, and the select board needs to sign off on that before those entities can send it to the state.
And
But the
that's
special
a different time frame.
amusement, are there any conditions on the special amusement permit? I guess I thought
I
there
haven't
was,
looked
but
at it.
maybe I'm confused. Sort of operating hours or?
I think we have the ability to implement those, should we desire. I think we've done that I think boards have done that in the past.
I guess I thought there was an application, but I must be wrong, because
They're a
everybody's.
general application that the entities submit to us with the payment, and then they pay, and then they register. So I guess in the past, did you provide all of that information? Yeah, so that's maybe, with this, we just did the fire inspection showing that all of those entities passed.
Okay. Dave?
In the past, I do remember setting time limits for especially the slow bill.
Those are I believe, and like I said, I did not look at these applications, but I believe those timeframes are already kind of more or less permanently implemented.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we had any that we wanted to change,
Yeah.
this would be a time to talk about that. So any other questions from the board before we go to public questions?
Yeah, this is a public work
Yeah.
here,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
So any other comments from the board? Okay, any comments from the public on these 5 applications? Questions?
I think there's 4 applications.
There's 5 applications, we only have the fire inspection report for 4.
Well, it's not listed, there are only 4 listed under the public hearing.
Correct. But there are 5 applications in front of the town, and I would propose that we discuss the 5th one when we get down to item 25-031. That's just my
I
thought.
don't disagree, but then we should have listed the 5th one under the public hearing.
The issue was not known until after the agenda was finalized, unfortunately. Jonathan?
Good evening. The inspections for instance, just to give you for instance, for the Slowville Cafe started in January. There's Cunningham Security, which finished 2 weeks ago, but like Dean announced, Sprinkler Company came over and started maintenance in January of 2025. And then AAA inspection did the hood and the extinguishers. The only reason you don't have a liquor license application in front of you is the state's gone to a Bell's electronic, and I had a little problem with it. I couldn't do it when I was at sea. So I just finished it up. Everything is included. I just had to include the menu, and then I talked to the state about it, and they're kind of a little bit hard to get in touch with because you can't necessarily call them, you have to email them and then wait for a reply. But, so I submit the application and then it automatically goes to the town.
Yeah, that's a new process this year. So the town, once they receive it, then we will bring that forth in front of the select board. And until we do, and we have that complete application, so the liquor licenses are completely different. Well, they're similar. They're a completely different process than special amusement and vigilers. And so we would have to have a special hearing and then to take action similar to that.
It's just here. I was trying to get it, I thought there was a possibility of doing it tonight or like Saturday,
Nope, absolutely
So
not.
when does your current liquor license expire?
July 2nd. But I can apply to the state either for an extension or for a temporary extension.
All right, so we don't need to worry about it. We're not impacting your business tonight.
I hope not, but
Right.
it's just like I said, it's all sort of bubbled up into
Yep.
this.
Yep.
But like I said, I mean, I really did start in January. I just wanted you to know that.
Thank you.
So otherwise, everything should proceed.
Good.
Yeah, just try to make sure that if that's your time frame on the liquor license, that we in the town office have the application in hand. So the meeting is June 18th. We need that application in the office the prior Friday and no later then, because
Right.
that has to be to
Know
the
that.
board in the packet.
Yeah.
And if it is late, then that could impact, because that's a document that the select board, with these, it's on a municipal level, that's on a state level.
Right.
And so I would be very hesitant to not have it advertised, to not have the hearing, because if the state ever comes back and says, when did the select board, if there is no track record, we could potentially put you in the position of not having the state pass it.
But just so you know, I mean, I did start in January. You can see all of everything else has been completed. The state's dance license permit doesn't expire until September 25th. But I've already applied for that as well, so
Good.
everything should go forward.
Thank you.
Okay.
Other comments, questions from the public? Paul?
Good evening. Just for information purposes, the applications for the special amusement and victuals license for the neighborhood were completed on March 5th. I submitted them to the town with paperwork. It's the very same space, it's the very same activities, okay? Nothing has changed. If anyone acting for the town, be it code enforcement officer, fire chief, or anyone, can't fulfill their responsibilities in 90 days to complete an inspection, or at least let the applicant know that they have some false concern about space, okay, that's irresponsible of the town. So I would ask for the same public review that we've had before, the same approval, hopefully granted, and if there is a contingency on any necessary inspection, we'll gladly accept that, okay, and get everything done. But we've done our part. So I'm asking tonight, the town finally do theirs. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Other questions, comments from the public on this topic? All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Okay. I just have a question of the end. There was an issue here about the sprinkler tank being low. I just wanted to confirm that's fine.
Can we direct that question to Vika, please?
Yeah, so a re-visit was done,
Okay,
it was passed,
okay.
and they're good to go.
Thank you.
Okay. Carol?
I don't think it makes a difference for tonight, but there is a separate application for the special amusement permit, which does, it's a separate application. I would recommend normally that it was in our packet last year.
Yep.
And I would recommend we include it. It doesn't have any specifics about hours of operation, probably it should, but it does ask some pertinent questions that we should be sure are. So for me, approval of all of these is going to be contingent on the fact that these applications are the same as the previous year.
Yep. Okay. With that, Vika, are you okay if we close the public hearing and go back to business?
I'm okay with it, yeah, as long
Do we
as,
need to vote on that?
no, the hearing just get closed and
Okay.
then you go into.
All right, so the public hearing is now closed, the public hearing for special amusements and victualler licenses. Moving on, item 25-031, to take any action from the public hearing for special amusement and victuallers licenses. Carol?
I make a motion that we approve the special amusement and victuallers licenses for the Shabig Island Community Hall, the Dowdy's Island Market, Slovell Cafe, the Shabig Island Inn, and the Niblick, contingent upon a completed inspection for the Niblick, and I guess the way to put this is no changes in the special amusement permits. I guess signed special amusement permits consistent with the permits issued last year.
Good. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Second by David, motion by Carol. Discussion from the board? Carol?
No.
Okay. Okay, any discussion or comments, questions from the public? Jonathan? Yes, please.
I would just say that as far as like the special amusement permit, I mean, the hours of operation and all that get hashed out in the planning board process. So the approval by the planning board includes hours of operation and all that, so it should be kind of hammered out. But like for the Slovell, I have hard and fast rules that, hours that I will not.
The motion is that there's no change from the last one.
But I'm just saying, part of that is just, it gets hashed out during
Right.
the site plan review process.
Right, the motion's just relative to the victualler's permit, so yeah.
Just saying,
Yep.
just so everybody knows.
Sorry, special use. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor, it's been seconded and discussed. All in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous? Thank you. All right, moving on. Item 25-032, to discuss the proposed changes to the parking and traffic ordinance, including Stonework parking and Bennett's Cove parking related concerns. We also mentioned earlier the possibility of other parking and traffic items that have come up tonight, including the concept of traffic on the beaches other than commercial fishing. And there was a marked up version of that ordinance in the packet. So any comments, questions from the board on that marked up version? Any suggestions for changes from the board? David?
Yeah, I'm looking at the part that talks about spaces on the stone wharf reserved for residents only.
What page are you on?
That's page, let's see, what page 4, section N, towards the top of the page. It basically says, shall be reserved for residents only between Labor Day and Memorial Day, with an attachment, which I assume is the drawing of the stone wharf. And let me continue with what it says. For this purpose, a resident is considered to be someone who is registered to vote on Shebig Island. Upon verification, a free sticker will be provided. Outstanding parking tickets must be paid in full. I'd like to move that we add to that, that definition for residents who own a home or have immediate family who owns a home on Shebig Island. The point being, I think it's rather disturbing to think about the amount of money we're spending on the stone wharf and keeping people off it. I think it's not very, no, it's not nice, I don't think, for the roughly 2/3 of the residents of the island who are paying property taxes to be excluded from a place that's more or less open to everybody else. So I think if we limit it to just Labor Day and, to just residents only, we're doing a disservice to our residents. So that's why I think we should add to that, to people who own a home or have immediate family. It's not leaving it wide open for anybody. It's serving our community that is serving us.
Richard?
I tend to agree with you, David. However, I think the way it's worded now, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, it's between Labor Day and Memorial Day.
It is.
Which is during essentially the winter season.
Yeah.
And so it's less of a concern. In fact, I think it would have a very small impact.
Yeah, the way it's worded is really kind of weird. What I'm trying to suggest is that year-round, everybody should have access equal access to parking on the stone wharf.
Okay, David, is that a motion?
It is.
Okay, is there a second? All right.
Sure.
Okay, motion by David.
So if that's a motion, I would like clarification
Please.
of what that motion is, because that was a discussion and that would be very difficult to put in a sentence for a motion.
The motion is to add to this, shall be reserved for residents only who own a home or whose immediate family own a home on Shebig Island.
So right after the word residents, add or those who own a home and their immediate family.
Or, yeah, either their immediate family or who own the home. So kind of it's both.
Okay. Got that?
I do, and
And
when
is
it's
that,
up for discussion, I have clarifying questions.
and that you're okay seconding
Yes.
that? Okay. Okay, open for discussion on the board. Any comments? Carol?
I don't understand how we would sort of classify, people that are not, immediate family members of, I just think that sounds like a big headache. I can understand, year-round and seasonal residents or property owners, but I don't know how we would identify immediate family. And to me, I think maybe we should be looking at a system that stickers property owners' vehicles and provides some priority to them on the stone wharf as opposed to, say, commercial vehicles. I think we did receive a thoughtful email from Gary Oderda, and I don't know, I think we should, maybe we should discuss some of the points in that email, because I think there were some questions about what the objectives of these changes in the parking are, and I would like to understand it, to see if the board is in agreement about what those objectives are.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's appropriate, because that email might be normally taken under correspondence, but.
Yeah, I was planning on bringing up that email. There was some, I think everybody got a copy of that email, and Mika got a copy
But
of
it's
it as well.
pertinent to this
It
issue,
is.
so it's.
I think it's appropriate to discuss it
Absolutely. I was
under
planning
this
on bringing
agenda
it up
item, because it's
now.
relevant to this
Yeah.
specific one. It's not a random communication irrelevant to this one.
So there's a motion on the floor, but we could certainly include that memo in the discussion, the points in that memo in the discussion. I would just also, as a discussion item, add that when several months ago, we first made the change to allow only resident stickers on the Stone Pier parking, except for the ADA access and the 2 CTC spots. The strategy, or the reason I voted for it, was based on the fact that it's harder and harder for people who are living here year-round to get back and forth based on the amount of traffic as our population density increases. And I think, consistent with the comprehensive plan, it's important that we maintain a balance of year-round and summer community on this island. And I think the socioeconomic drivers and direction for the last several years has been a dramatic increase in the number of residences and therefore cars that are not year-round residences. So for me, it's a matter of protecting in some small way a part of the population that is not as vibrant or resilient as it has been in the past, and I think not as vibrant and resilient as the comprehensive plan speaks to. So that's why I voted for it the last time. That's why I will vote this time to maintain that same distinction, but that's my personal comment. The Oderda email, I don't think that's not part of the packet because it just showed up afterwards. I'll pull it up. If anybody else has, Carol, do you have a copy of it in front of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it might be good to provide a little bit of background. So the first change that we made, the first change that we made, if I remember correctly, a significant change, was about this time of year, or actually a little bit later. It was the month of August, right, to route the traffic in a circular pattern down on the Stone Pier to see if that would improve the traffic flow and safety. And that was, so to answer a question about, that Gary had, that was, to me, a priority, was trying to improve the traffic flow and therefore the safety and prevent people backing up into the neck of the Stone Pier and kids coming, and it's quite a mess in the summertime. We tried that for a month. Seemed to be, I think this consensus was, it limited the parking, but it was relatively, it was an improvement over what had been going on. I guess that's how I put it. So then later on, in this year, this fiscal year, and Mika, you probably remember when, we decided we were having a lot of issues with contractor parking down on the Stone Pier and residents not even being able to get parking spaces down there. So it was then that I think some of us discovered that our ordinance actually prohibits commercial vehicles on the Stone Pier and they need to park on Wharf Road. But we also at that time decided to move resident only. We had done talked about commuter only parking, but we changed, but a commuter is a strange thing these days because not everybody commutes 5 days a week, but some people are working, some people are taking children back and forth. And the other thing is there are no commuter tickets anymore. So it was a lot of back and forth, and we decided on year-round resident parking for that head of the pier, not the gravel area, just south of or west of the telephone pole. And
I believe it's 12, maybe 14 parking spaces in total that are impacted by just the resident parking.
so and that's how, for example, Long Island operates. Long Island has designated parking for residents year-round residents and seasonal residents. And so a lot of places operate that way. I will say I received a lot of positive feedback from year-round community members. I think it was a combination of moving the contractors out of there mostly, not always, because they still park there, and also, there weren't a lot of seasonal residents here at that time, so it really was a non-issue to me at that time. So in terms of seasonal residents being precluded, what's being proposed now, if I understand it correctly, is reverting to kind of the pattern that we had last year, which would not restrict seasonal or year-round. I mean, so anybody who's not a contractor would be treated the same way. So seasonal and year-round residents would be allowed to park in that area, but
For 3 months.
Correct.
we would restrict the parking so that we can have this loop around. And that's partly to control the traffic and the loading and unloading of gear and that kind of thing. So it also right now coincides with a restriction anyway because of the trap. So during the month of June, the fishermen can load traps over there. We can't park there anyway. So that, I think, was where we're at. So I just wanted to explain kind of where we, what we're proposing, because I think there is a bit of confusion. And we did get some feedback from seasonal residents even when we enacted this restriction back in March or April. But I personally felt like it had a pretty minimal impact at that time because it was mostly year-round residents who were on the island. I do think a significant part of the problem is the number, size, and irreverence of the contractors. Even though we spoke with them and asked them to cooperate, a lot of them, didn't initially, so we felt like we had to do something. I think we probably need to really look at satellite parking for the contractors because they're too big to be down there, and they are short-timers. A lot of them on the island don't really care about following the rules, and according to Vika, some of them are quite happy to pay daily tickets because it's just like paying for parking, so they don't care.
They pass it on to their consumer, to their,
Right.
whoever they're charging.
But we don't have an instant contractor parking lot. That's something I think we should try to expedite. And so that's one thing. I think what we're suggesting right now is no restriction between seasonal and year-round residents parking on the stone piers. That's what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not that changes in September, or whether or not we go to October, so that we can park down closer to the boat rather than the contractors. So that's really my thinking behind this. The overall issue with the traffic pattern that Vika and Eliza Jane were pretty committed to implementing, and I think their opinion is that it was successful last year, was safety. It wasn't, who gets to park where, it was traffic safety until we can complete the Stone Pier project. So that's kind of where because there was a question in this email, like why, what is the reason that what are you trying to fix? And so that's my explanation.
I'd like to add one other clarification. The current ordinance reads that off-island contractors can park in the parallel parking spots only. That's the area above the gravel. So the gravel pull-in or back-in spots, and I believe there are 24 or 26 of them, those are above the stone pier. So the way it's been up till now, there's been ADA on the stone pier. There have been 12 or 14 spots that were resident with sticker only on the stone pier. And there have been the 2 CTC spots on the stone pier. Additionally, there's bike parking and scooter parking down the way. The gravel is the next area up, and I've counted up to 12 contractor trucks parked in the gravel. I've spoken to several of them in a friendly way, just as a citizen, and they've all said, oh, I didn't know, we need better signage, thank you for telling me. And I've come back the next day and the same truck was parked there again. We have not been able to enforce that, and that's because the person we've had doing enforcement has a day job, and he goes down there at a certain time per day. And the contractors have all the off-island contractors have all figured out how to game that system. If you go down there at 3:15, you'll see contractors lining up to park who are going on the 3:45 boat. At 3:15. There's beer being consumed at 3:15 to 3:45 with some of them, not all of them. Some of them are sitting in their trucks looking at their phones, maybe filling out their timesheets, but it's a game. The game is being played. There are other games that get played down there, and my suggestion would be that one way we address that gaming is A, random timing of enforcement instead of one time per day. And we're now searching for another parking attendant because we've lost the one we did have. So we need to make that random. We need to figure out a system that allows us to enforce 24 hours, but still checks on a random basis. And we need to make sure the contractors, short term, are only parking in the parallel spaces. If we did that, then the number of spaces available for people who own property or are renting a property but who are not year-round residents would be a greater number than the spots that are available only to residents. I believe it's 12 to 26 or 14 to 26, something of that magnitude. So I think an immediate change that we need to implement is A, find another person for that role who can be there on random times, and B, begin aggressively enforcing the off-island contractor parking only in the parallel spots above the gravel. And C, I think this board, or the next board I should say, should look very closely at dramatically increasing the fines for second offense. First offense, I can see $25 is a little bit more than, well, it's actually less than the parking they're paying over on Cousins right now, but that money's just going straight to the person they're working for. But second offense, third offense, I think the fines, personally, I believe the fines should escalate dramatically to show that this is not a joke. This is a real policy. Longer term, and I hope it's not measured in years, but months, and Carol's idea of remote parking, that if you do not have, and maybe we need another sticker, but if you do not have a sticker that says I'm a resident or I'm a property owner, if that then means you're an off-island contractor, you're not allowed to park down there. I would support that kind of a motion, but I won't be answering about that. Carol.
Yeah, and so I think the issue, if we revert to what the current ordinance is proposing, both seasonal and year-round residents can park unrestricted. So what I would suggest, and I think we're contemplating to returning to this circular traffic pattern, but for a longer period of time than we did last year. So what I'd recommend is we do that and have a public workshop, in late July, and really, and have it, well advertised, get feedback from the community about how that worked. Maybe in the meantime, try to explore what the options are for some kind of remote parking, and, have a chance, because I agree, I think it would be good to get feedback from the summer community. I do think an alternative might be, instead of maybe Labor Day to Memorial Day, maybe it's October 15th to, March, April 1st or something, that we might have resident-only parking down there. I hate to see sort of stickers that are resident versus seasonal resident or something. I don't know what makes sense. I think we do have to sticker the people that are residents of some form, seasonal or year-round, because it's going to be the only, our experience is telling us it's the only way to discriminate, the people who pay taxes here from the people who are bringing vehicles over, because it's too hard for the town office to classify, I think, a commercial vehicle. And people are already playing games with the sticker thing, but at least that's one way. If everybody who's paying taxes on the island is eligible for a sticker, and I think Eliza Jane said at the meeting that her household has one because her husband is a Canadian citizen. So I think we can figure out the best way, but I think trying it for a couple more months, getting some feedback, that doesn't restrict seasonal residents from parking down the Stone Pier. It will be a free-for-all because there's not enough parking for all of us. But the good news is most of the contractor vehicles are out during the day, they come back at the end of the day, so maybe that will work. It's really not a lot better on the mainland side. I came in today and I got the very last parking place that I could find on Cousin Dial.
At
So
5 o'clock?
it was bad.
Yeah, at 5 o'clock, right?
No, this was at 10.
Oh,
10 a.m.?
It's because of so many contractor vehicles in that lot. So I think it's a problem on both sides. I think I would suggest we try this for a couple months. I understand the concerns from the seasonal residents and what David expressed, but personally, I think I would go with this the way it is and then revisit it before the summer's over and to see if we want to change it.
okay. And the drawing was not attached, and
I'm sorry.
I refrained, I should have asked, but is the drawing that's referenced under item N that David referred to in his motion,
The
does
same
it,
one that was there before.
during the summer months, eliminate parking where it's currently eliminated for lobster traps? Or does it allow parking there?
It eliminates parking for
For half of them, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's,
so where the no parking for the fishermen, this proposal is proposing that during the summer months between Memorial Day and Labor Day, that it remains no parking. And it works with the fishermen during June, but then the rest of the 2 months, it is used as a staging area, pick-up and drop-off area, allowing for a better circular safety passage, which was, for me as the town administrator, what I received in the office was only positively received last year when we did it for a brief amount of time.
okay. So any other, Richard, please.
I would just add to it is I really like having that turnaround down there. The way it's, as it's written, gets us through the next few months until we can modify this resident seasonal visitor. But I think the issue is, like we said, the commercial trucks.
Yep.
But the best way to differentiate them from us is to have everybody who's resident or seasonal to have the sticker. And if you don't have a sticker, you're a commercial truck, probably.
Okay, so before we do that, we're going to need to carefully define what is a resident,
Yeah.
what is a property owner. There's a third group of people who visit here who rent. We'll need to talk about that, think about that. And some of them come for 2 months every summer and rent, so we need to think about that from a community standpoint. After we decide on this motion, I'm going to make another motion relative to signage. That has been the easy out for some of the contractor conversations, so I just wanted to put that out there that there'll be another motion. So any other discussion on this motion from the board at this point? Eliza?
I have great compassion for the letter from Mr. Oderda about the difficulties of moving things, and I just want to say that, but looking at in part, this is a sensitive issue, but the preservation of how challenging it is for many commuters with families and trying to get that done, I think that is a fragile population that we need to work well to preserve. And I counted all the lots on the tax map. So if we're opening it up to residents and property owners, there are 720 lots on our tax map. So I don't think we can making a distinction between a property owner and a seasonal or year-round. We're talking about 20 spots for 720 property owners. So the math just doesn't work as far as trying to make it fair for everybody. It isn't fair. It isn't fair for commuters. It isn't fair for seasonal people with heavy objects trying to get it to the vehicle. I just don't see a way to make that happen, but I think a conversation this summer is a good idea. The last point that I'd like to make is I love the traffic circle. I thought that taking those spots out, creating that traffic circle, people, it seemed intuitive enough to make it work, and that to me seemed much safer down there, especially during those busy times. Thank you.
So one thing that I do want to point out is that with any ordinance in this municipality, the process is it goes to town meeting for a town vote. The parking and traffic ordinance is the only one that the select board has the authority to change anytime they want. So I have been bold enough to propose these changes, and I give the board a lot of credit for adopting some of these changes because they did exactly what is needed to be done, which is have a discussion and try to come up with a solution, because every car on this island does not have the capacity to park at the Stone Pier. It is causing it to be unsafe, and it is putting this municipality in a potential liability of an accident waiting to happen. So I don't think the town and the select board is trying to do anything to eliminate one thing or another. I think it's trying to find a solution. It is a very difficult solution to find, but at the end of the day, this is the only ordinance they have the power. They can bring this in front of them for a discussion every 2 weeks and make these changes. And I think I just want to point that out, that these are recommendations, and the purpose is to take some of these recommendations as they get adopted and try them. Does it work? Great. Does it not? Okay, scratch it and try it again. And so I do want to recognize that the board has taken a lot of heat for some of these topics, but it's ultimately to try to find the right solution. And this isn't the last time that this is going to be on the agenda. It is probably going to be on the agenda several times over the next year. And so I support the people that are providing their recommendation, because ultimately it's giving ideas and suggestions of how improvements could be made.
And I'm going to make one more comment before I open it up to public comment. A lot of the ideas that are being discussed and even proposed in this version of the parking ordinance are consistent with changes that we expect in the proposal that we hope to see from GEI within the next several months. That proposal being a proposed redesign of the Wharf Road Stone Pier parking situation. There are elements in that expected proposal that we cannot do today, but there are a few elements that we expect to come out of that work that are included in this proposal. So it's, in effect, it's gradually moving toward what we expect to come to the table later on this year from that engineering project, that what we refer to as the 30% design work that's going on right now with GEI. So with that, I'll open up to any public comment on this item. Gary.
Well, thank you. I'd like to thank the board for your deliberate consideration of my comments. I really appreciate you taking a look at them. I think a couple things that you said I think are really important. One of them is if you do more to enforce the current regulations, then I think that's going to open up more parking spaces in the gravel area. And if this specifically really only applies from September until May, I think there'll be enough parking there so everybody will be able to, not all 700 cars, but everybody will be able, even if they're carrying things, to be able to work with that. My concern was being forced way up Wharf Road and being able to do that. But I think with those things, I can certainly live with what you're talking about, and I really appreciate your consideration.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you for your letter as well. Other public comments on this topic before the board votes? Mark and then Jackie.
And this is, you're still relatively discussing the ordinance.
We have
A motion, yeah. And it's around really stonework. You haven't even explored the rest of the ordinance,
Correct.
so.
Mark is coming up?
No, you go ahead.
He's deferring to you, Jen.
Oh, I was just getting ready.
The gentleman from the West End defers to the lady from the West End, as they say in the Senate.
are we going back this summer to the circular thing?
I believe that is.
Please.
That's what's being proposed in the current ordinance,
Okay.
correct?
I think there has to be some provision or space for the people who are bringing, groceries or whatever, a place to put your bags or a wagon or whatever, while you go. I mean, I'm lucky it's a lucky day when I can get the handicap spot, but if you're parked up the road, you're gonna have to drive down and get your stuff, and a special area near the circular thing.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. And then Mark?
And I also commend the town and the board for trying to tackle this ongoing problem at the Stonewall, because while I was on there, we didn't tackle it very well, or didn't have the energy for it, or one or the other. Couple of comments and questions, if I may. I'm not a huge fan of taking away parking spaces in a limited resource area without some other ideas or plans to replace them. So I would pursue Carol's thoughts to talk to property owners that may be open to leasing some property to the town for off-site parking, knowing that then a shuttle would have to be supplied to get people back and forth for certain boats, not all boats. Second of all, the end of the stone walk will still be accessible, is that accurate? I think that goes to Jackie's question.
Sort of.
If you come,
There is nothing in the current proposal, nor has there been, to completely block off the end. The goal was to try to
yeah,
eliminate and encourage the traffic to that area to make that better.
To discourage the backing up.
Yeah.
thank you. And then, the idea of having a pattern where you come down and you're able to make a circular swing, I think is what you're going for with and I think that kind of works. I don't know if the radius is there, I haven't measured it. We'll get DOT over here to do the radius measurement for you.
Not on their standards is not, but we did move a car through to make
I'm
sure we
being-
could
I'm being
squeeze
facetious.
in.
But here's my point. I would hope that the sheriff's department, at least while they're here, would help with people driving down and just deciding they're going to park on the left and sit there in the way
Right.
and clog up your idea of access. And my point is, I think we are now asking the sheriff's department to do some of our parking checks. Is that accurate?
Correct, when, during the day, I'm not going to disclose, because that's the whole point of him. Not knowing when he's around to do it.
Well, I would hope that would be the case, and
Yes.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
And of course, I had one more question, and now I think I've answered. And I'm hoping that the discussions with the Spiegelman Golf Course have not ceased. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Other questions and comments? Yes.
Is, just a point of clarification, is the conversation about parking at Bennett Cove a part of this conversation or separate?
It's a part of this agenda item, it's not a part of this motion.
So maybe wrap up this motion and.
Trying to, yeah. So Eliza, you had something you wanted to say and reply to Jackie's question?
Right, I was just gonna quickly reply, there were many people who thought no longer could they go down the neck. We like it when you can put your gear on the benches, then go up and get your car. People can do the circular pickup, but it still is allowed to go down there to pick up your gear. I think that was what you were talking about. Okay, you can still drive down there, pick up your stuff when you've unloaded the boat. Thank you.
And then in answer to Mark's question relative to the golf course conversation, the status of that conversation is that we have an MOU between the golf course and the town that supports the concept of that eventual transfer. The golf course has asked that we wait until we're ready for the rubber to hit the road to actually execute documents. at which point there would be lots of conversations to be had, but
Town meeting vote.
there would need to be a town meeting vote as well, and that won't be at this town meeting. That could possibly be at a fall town meeting, which we expect this year, or it may need to wait until we have further results from GEI. But to answer Mark's question specifically, yes, that topic is still very much a part of the work that GEI is included as an option in the work that GEI is doing right now. We've had public comment on this item. Is there, can we, yes, John? Please.
I didn't really realize we were going to get into this, but there's a letter on record for Wilson Property offering shuttle parking from 2012.
I'm guessing that's what Mark was referring to, but yes. Yep.
But, you know, it's zone commercial. Also, I mean, the only thing I would say is you have to look at the transportation system, and it goes back to whether or not you keep the existing system or go to a car ferry. I don't like to see, the only thing I would say is that if we keep planning for the Stone Wharf without knowing what the transportation system is, because a car ferry changes.
Okay, we're gonna stop. We're not talking about car ferries tonight, we're talking about something.
But I'm happy to offer.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, there is a motion on the floor. Mika, can you read, or Chris, can you read the motion?
I'm gonna have to listen to it on the tape.
So what it does is it adds to, for the purpose, a resident is considered someone who is registered to vote on Big Island, but then it includes that shall reserved for residents only, or own a home or their immediate family.
Right.
And so it's adding that clause to it.
Okay, that is the motion on the floor. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, all opposed? Okay, there was 1 yes and 4 no. David was the yes. Okay, are there other motions to be made on this particular topic at this point? Carol?
I'm not gonna make a motion, I don't think it needs a motion. I think I think the way the changes are being proposed for now makes sense to try, because we only tried it in the month of August, I think, doing it in June and July. I personally would like to see a public workshop at the end of July. And I don't think we have to make a motion about it, I'm just saying, so that we could really have a conversation about what's working and what's not. And I think we also got to talk to the contractors, because they are essential. And, you know, we're kind of making them villains here, and it's you know, they need a place to park.
Right.
And so I think we need a plan, and we need to work with them. I also think we have a challenge because we don't really have adequate enforcement, and, you know, we had talked about a boot, and maybe we want to consider a boot, you know, for the summer, because it might help send a message.
So you're then suggesting that we not vote on the
No, I'm just saying, relative to the conversation about the stone pier, I think the way the changes have been proposed, I'm in favor of.
Okay. Would you be willing to make a motion that we approve these changes, or do we have more to talk about?
I think there are other changes about Bennett's and others that we need to discuss.
Okay, got it. Okay, I'd like to, I'm not sure if it requires a motion, but I would like to ask that we put a very specific sign up at the top of the gravel on the right side of the road as you're driving away from the stone pier that says off-island contractors can only park from here up the road. Something worded more smoothly than that. But for all those contractors who have said to me individually, I wish there was a sign that explained that, I would like to have a sign right there that says, this is where you park. And I do want to make the distinction between off-island contractors as opposed to just contractors, because we have residents who vote here who are also contractors. They're a smaller percentage all the time, given the number of off-island folks that we have coming. And nothing against the off-island folks, as Carol said, they're a vital part of our community at this point in time, but I think we need to make that distinction from a parking standpoint, so. Carol, you had something?
Well, I kind of feel like that's a hard distinction. I mean, we could try to capture it here, but it's kind of fuzzy. And, you know, unless we designate them as off island, I don't know. I think in a way, sort of saying these folks have access and these folks don't, because you don't have a sticker. I mean, in other words, stickering people with access rather than the reverse. Is, to me, seems simpler to implement, but I don't know.
So, yes.
And I would call them non-resident contractors.
Just good one.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's a good
non-resident contract, that's an excellent.
Must.
Or you might put some kind of a sign that says, for parking information, contact the town office. You'd love that.
Okay, so other changes that are highlighted in the draft,
Can I make a comment?
please.
I think there is value in educating. I think at the end of the day, the people that are breaking the rules, a lot of them are well aware of what the rules are, and they simply don't care. And so I think it comes down to educating and enforcement, which we do have a new parking attendant who will be starting soon. And so, I'm not disclosing what his car looks like for an obvious reason. But I think that this is really more, the parking enforcement position is what needs to be changed more thoroughly, in more detail than adapting it to the changes here. But I think educating workshop, I think, is a great idea. I'm happy to make out flyers and send somebody and put them on every single car at the Stone Pier. I think at the end of the day, it would be great if these people who knew of this implementation just did the honorable thing and followed the rule. A lot of them aren't going to, so I like Bob's idea, just triple the fine, because we have seen a change in, not everybody, but enough that a change has been noticed in the fact that several months ago, it was recommended that after 2 nights, the fine double. That has had an impact on some people. And so if after 2 nights or 3 nights, you don't make it $50, you make it $200, that really could send a message to people, because that's a big change in price. And so I would encourage the board to maybe keep that in mind, just to show that message that, look,
It's not a joke.
try to do your best. We're all trying to make it fair for everyone, but when people aren't following, it's just making the process that much harder for everyone.
So the ordinance that refers to fines is a separate ordinance?
Oh, no, it's right in here.
It's in
It's
here.
under
Okay.
penalties.
Got it,
On
okay.
page 5.
Okay, so think about that as we consider crafting a motion relative to this draft ordinance. I know a lot of people are here to talk about Bennett's. If you look at section 108, item D has been added that says, no idling is permitted on Bennett's Cove Road. Any vehicles waiting for a barge should do so in the marked designated staging area near the intersection of Deer Point Road and South Road. So obviously marked implies that we will be buying signs, right?
We have ordered the signs.
Yep. From the board, are there, go ahead.
Sorry, we have also ordered no idling signs, or we have, I don't know if the order's been placed for that yet, but we know what we will and should be ordering if that is the direction.
Okay, Carol.
So my only question for that is, when you say marked, you mean marked with a sign?
Correct.
And if there's 10 vehicles, so are they just gonna line up on that road, depending on the number of vehicles? I'm just trying to envision what it looks like.
That's kind of the idea, and I think that will ultimately probably create a issue that then we're going to have to revisit. I did speak, that was another conversation we had with Lionel yesterday, and we did ask if they can encourage the people that are utilizing their services to have off-site location. They are willing to work with us. What they recommend on every other island is where there are station areas is to tell people to park in the station area and wait for them to toot the horn to know when to come down. What they're really experiencing, just as this community is experiencing, is an influx of people that are using the services that they simply don't know. The person who books the barge is not the person who's getting on the barge. And so individual communication with the drivers is very difficult from them, and they cannot simply promise us that. But they are willing to work with us to try to recognize and help us with this problem. The sheriff is now making regular runs down there as well. We have, when we received any kind of communication that there is a car parked there or something, we go down there and we've ticketed them. The problem we're experiencing with some of the people going off who we're ticketing, we're never going to get that money from them because we have no idea who they are or how to get a hold of them. So that's kind of that loophole that is a little bit of a struggle to adapt to.
So I'd like to try to get to closure on this one. We have a couple more agenda items, and we do have an executive session tonight, and it's already 8 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken, getting close. So any other comments on the ordinance as drafted? Any other changes we might want to make as in the ordinance as drafted? Carol?
So on section 110 on page 5, based on Vicky's comments, overnight parking after 2 consecutive days, more than 48 hours, I think we should bump up that fee. And I'm open to suggestions, but, $100 would make people pretty nervous, I'd hope. Or 75, I don't know. So right now, it's 25 if you're parking beyond 24 hours, and then if you continue to park, say, through the weekend. So say a contractor parked on Friday and stayed till Monday, I think that would, in a place they shouldn't park, that would be where that would apply.
Yeah, so the first 24 hours is 25, second is 25, and then it would increase to 50.
I guess I would suggest 75 so that it's painful.
I would change it. I would say the first night is 25, the second night is 50, the third night is 75. And 75 per night thereafter.
Do we have, but right now we have 24 hours and then 48 hours.
Well, the wording, overnight parking after 2 consecutive days, I believe more than 48 hours. We don't have anything for 48 hours. So right now, it's 25 for 24 hours. I assume it's 25 for the second 24 hours. I would suggest the second 24 hours be 50, not 25.
I don't know that it's 25 for the second 24 hours, is it?
Yeah, so the first day of no parking, it's 25, second day it's 25, third day it's 50.
Right.
Okay.
So I would take it to 25, 50, 75.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion, and I can
So
put
we
that in.
need to add a
So
Language, yeah.
overtime parking more than 24 hours would be 50.
I'd like to make that motion, please.
Can I just make a suggestion? Instead of making motions for every recommendation,
Right.
can we go through the
Yes.
ordinance and make any recommendations you have, and then make a motion to adopt
Right.
that ordinance
Yes.
with the
With these listed
recommendations?
changes. Yes.
That would make things a lot easier for minutes.
Yep.
If that's
So,
okay.
is the board, are we okay with that concept of 25, 50, 75, 75 each day thereafter?
Yes.
Yes and no. I think that for contractors who are gaming, that's important to make it hurt. But for people parking there, that seems pretty steep. So if it's
But the whole zone is only 24-hour parking.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, is that
okay.
all of Stone Pier, the second you hit to Wharf Road, is 24 hours maximum.
We now, I believe, have a taxi service opening up
I
on
know,
the
I've been
island.
waiting for that taxi service to
We
come
have,
up.
I believe, at least one still service, and maybe there are more, people who are willing to move cars for money.
That still exists.
Yep, and sadly, we lost one of those recently. But there are options, and
Yeah.
those of us who live here who choose to park there for 3 days, I think need to
Okay,
understand that's not acceptable. And if they have some extenuating circumstance, I went to the mainland for 24 hours, but I broke my leg and I've been in the hospital. I'm
That's
pretty
different.
sure the
Those
town office
people
will
call
be,
me.
yes.
I get phone calls
Yeah.
with those, and I
Mostly
have
it's
the
not.
right in this ordinance to make that exception.
Correct.
okay.
So,
And may I ask a question? Should we be looking at a different fee for overnight parking at Bennett's Cove? Is that enough of an issue, or is this enough to address that?
You mean a penalty fee?
Yeah,
So these penalties would apply to any of the offenses across the island.
right, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that I know that there was a vehicle that was there for 4 days.
It's
And-
5 nights, isn't it?
Was it 5 nights?
So
Okay.
they'd owe us several $100s.
that'd be 25, 50, 75, 75, 75.
Okay, that's enough.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
I'm going to propose that we, as part of this discussion, add a boot.
Okay.
To Vika's point, if a moving van parks there for 5 days, and we put a ticket on their window and they're from South Carolina,
we're done with them. Yeah,
but if they're parked there and they get back to their truck and there's a boot on it, they're not moving that truck till they pay the bill. That's how
You
it
already
works.
gave me the authority to order one, so if you want me to move forward with that, we can do that.
Okay.
And after
And I would
48
suggest,
hours, we can have
Yep.
them just throw a boot on it. Problem is, I think we're gonna need like 10 of them.
well, I would buy one
But
boot
we could
and I would use
Just
it,
one.
I would
We'll
use it
cross that line
judiciously
when we get there.
when there's an egregious offense, and I would suggest that anybody parking overnight at Bennett's is an egregious offense, but that the parking attendant, including the sheriff, with the town administrator, decide when to deploy the boot, and let's try that, just like we're trying a lot of things, and see what happens. But I'm really concerned about, in particular, people that park at Bennett's, never seeing them again. And when they see that $250 worth of fines, they don't care because they're from South Carolina, or they're from Kansas, or whatever.
Okay.
So I would add the boot. You've already been authorized to do that.
Yep.
So, other suggestions in this magnum motion that's coming up? Richard?
I have one little word I'd like to change on page 4, section 108, in the Bennett's Code, in that read like any vehicles waiting for a barge must do so, instead of should do so, because must means
Correct.
absolute, should means yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a good change.
Okay.
Can you, I'm right here. Okay, perfect, thank you.
Nice.
I have one more recommendation when the board is done, because I think this might
Sure.
lead to a quick
And maybe it's the
conversation.
same as Vika's, but I do think, I don't know what, I should have come with some wording, but basically what we were just talking about earlier is prohibiting vehicle traffic, on the beaches with the exception of commercial fishermen. Licensed commercial fishermen, I think is how I would describe it.
Yep.
Including ATVs, I don't know how explicit we have to be, but just any vehicle traffic.
No motorized.
And Vika, for Chandler's, it's really not so much the beaches, but they are
That
driving
stream.
through the stream, so I don't know how we should word this.
No motorized vehicle traffic on beaches other than licensed commercial fishermen.
Okay.
And I think beaches, maybe that's broad enough to cover the back dune area.
Yep. All right. So I've got a list of items I could include in a motion. I can read it if you like.
I have one more
Please,
recommendation. So that was one of them on town roads, and then the other one that I would like to propose or have the board consider, or maybe even have it be a separate agenda item, is I would encourage the select board to block off Chandler Beach Road access so they cannot access through the stream in a vehicle. And I would also recommend that the same thing be done on the town right-of-way portion to block off the access which has been blocked off by Audubon.
So say this again, so the little area when you go into Chandler's down to the right.
Yes.
So yeah, where people can drive down.
Yeah. To block
That stream
that
is a protected stream, and people are notoriously driving vehicles,
Yeah.
ATVs. Last year, I saw somebody back up their truck only to remove a keg out of it.
Okay.
And that is a persistent issue, so my recommendation, and if you want to have it as an agenda item, that's fine. Place a couple large boulders there. At the same time, do the same thing at Jenks Beach to the access to the left. So we as a municipality are encouraging and making a stand to close that access off from a municipal road through private traffic and only allow the access that is existing there for the 33-foot town right away.
Carol?
So if we make a motion that if we approve that addition, I think that is consistent with that, blocking it off is consistent with what will be in the ordinance, so I don't know, I don't want to put it in the ordinance. It's really an action that we would take to kind of enforce the ordinance, right?
I think as a road commissioner, may have some flexibility with that.
Yeah.
But obviously, the board really needs
But I
to.
would see it sort of as a different decision than changes to the parking, traffic.
I think that's a discussion we can have after this motion, but I think Carol's right. Leave the stones out of the motion, just so it's not part of the ordinance.
Right.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna try to recap all this as a motion, but that's okay with the board? I would move that we change the fines in section 110 penalties to $25 for violating the 24 hours, $50 for violating 48 hours, $75 each day thereafter. I would include in this motion that we begin to deploy the boot in what the TA and the parking enforcement officials deem to be egregious situations, with a focus on Bennett's and vehicles that might not pay a fine. Thirdly, that no motorized vehicle traffic is allowed on beaches other than licensed commercial fishermen. That's the motion.
I'll second it.
I'm
Discussion.
sorry, David, did you second that?
I did.
Great idea.
Any other discussion from the board? We talked about this a lot. I kind of like to keep this moving. It's a big change, and I think I tried to capture in that motion everything that the board was talking about tonight.
And you can change it in 2 weeks if you decide you want to, so I want to make sure that that's very
2 weeks
clear
after
to
that.
people.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, yep.
So discussion from the board, not seeing any discussion from the public. Jack?
How many designated spaces will there be, up on what I call the main road, the other side of the intersection?
I believe the answer is there are no designated spaces per se. I would assume that there's a space, there's no marked off spaces. The maximum number of vehicles that would be parked there would be the number of vehicles that fit on a barge, or in certain circumstances, even up to as many as would fit on 2 barges. I would suggest that if the town begins to see more than 6 or 7 vehicles there, if the town sees vehicles parked up to and in front of the Hillicox house, that we need to come up with a plan B. But I would suggest we start with this. My guess is you're gonna see at most 3 or 4 vehicles there at a time, but that's my guess.
I predict there will be more than 3 or 4. You may remember that prior to the last select board meeting, John and I counted 9 vehicles and he counted 12.
Right, and that was at an instance of both boats being there at the same time. That was at an instance of all the trucks going down, all the way down at the same time, but yes.
And sometimes more than, well, as you said, more than 1 barge worth number of vehicles are parked currently on Bennett's Cove.
Yeah.
in regard to the fines and the motion, did that include what the fine would be for violation of overnight parking at Bennett's?
Yes.
Of interest is that, again, last night, a Bartlett's tree, a yellow Bartlett's tree truck was parked overnight.
Thank you.
And so, should I call the non-emergency number?
I would call, if you wanted to take action, if I lived down there and I wanted to take action, I would call Bartlett's. Bartlett's.
Well, I did call Bartlett's at the end of the 5-night violation. And it was not a satisfying phone call.
In that case, I would suggest calling the non-emergency number and reporting. I've had luck in the past calling up contractors who I see speeding, what I perceive to be speeding down the public roads, by calling the owners and speaking to them. But that's not always the case, obviously. So, yes.
Just a quick. So thank you for the discussion this evening. I appreciate the motion that we've just discussed. And I hope that enforcement that we've talked about mirrors the motion that was put forward tonight. If there are questions like Carol's about what that looks like, I don't know, of course, what it looks like on the main road, but I have plenty of videos and pictures I can send of what it looks like on Bennett's Cove with the 12 trucks blocking driveways up to Vale's house. And I just want to keep at the forefront too, lastly, that, you know, we talk about the noise or blocked driveways and things like that, but at the end of the day, what doesn't change about Bennett's Cove, no matter what iteration of things we're talking about, is it is a hill that winds up and the visibility is very poor, and there are small children and dogs that we can control as far as possible that do not have the executive function always to decide for themselves what is safe. And so safety is the paramount concern for myself, the parent of a 2-year-old and a dog. And, you know, I think that as we're having these discussions, enforcement and strict enforcement, like we've talked about tonight, is a step in that direction, where the truck that Jackie mentioned, $20 over 5 nights, but moves from a deterrent to an incentive. So I think these new measures do a good job to combat that, but just to reiterate that this is a serious safety issue first and foremost.
Thank you. Other public comments? All right, there's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded, discussed. All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you all, and thank you everybody who commented. It's a complicated situation. All right, moving on. To discuss the Facilities Committee next steps and plans for a summer workshop, there was a brief memo from the new chair of the Facilities Committee in the packet. I think the last Facilities Committee meeting, which I was not able to attend, focused on the fact, or one of the focuses of the meeting was the fact that we have many capital challenges in front of us and not as many dollars as the capital challenges. And they've begun to consider an examination of the problems from the standpoint of what are the specific challenges and what other solutions might be out there. And one example that I believe Eliza brought up some time ago was the concept of the per diems needing housing. Is there a more cost-effective way to provide that housing? So what the committee, by way of this memo from David, is suggesting is that this board have a public workshop with that committee this summer to revisit the challenges of the public safety building and the public safety department from a facilities standpoint. What are the code issues? what are the changing population dynamic issues, that kind of thing, and get public input on what solutions might be out there. So is that something this board would entertain recommending to the next board that such a workshop happen this summer?
I think so.
August.
Carol?
Yeah, and I guess to that, I think where Eliza James come from, there's a lot of meetings happening. We have a special town meeting coming up, and so, if it needs to be summer, great. If not, even the fall might be better, just because I think it's gonna be pretty busy.
Yep.
Meeting wise, because we have to prepare for that special town meeting with public hearings and stuff.
So I'll put it on the list of future agenda items.
Yep.
Vika can hand that off.
I mean,
to
I
you
think
next
it's a
year.
good idea.
Yeah, okay.
Good.
All right, other comments? Any comments from the public on that topic? Okay. Moving on to discuss and determine funding possibilities for GPCOG Resilience Core Fellowship Program. I had a conversation with Ellie earlier today. She has been told now by her supervisor that their funding is secure through the balance of the contract year. And I said, we got a memo in response to our question, what is the actual minimum that you need from us for Ellie to continue? And the answer was $5,000. $10,000 is the cost, but we have to have $5,000 from you. I was not able to square that circle other than by referring to earlier times when, not from any vindictive way, but the message they're giving to their fellows, their employees, is not the same message that we're hearing. In other words, telling Ellie and her cohort, you're covered for the rest of the year, might not mean that they're finished fundraising. So from my standpoint, there's currently a request on the table for a minimum of $5,000 from us from GPCOG. There's been some discussion about using grant money to cover that. We have a couple of grants that from what I understand, we have the capability of spending some resiliency grant money on this position. And I believe GPCOG, Carol, maybe you remember, I think they were asking for an answer by the end of.
Well, the memo that you stuck in the packet said up to 10,000.
Yes.
So, but you have information that it's a minimum of 5.
Yeah, I think I
And Long
shared that.
Island told me they were paying like 6,400. I don't know where that number came from, but I just saw them yesterday, so they're paying under 10. I think it's what they had left in some program. So I think the resiliency grant you're referring to is the ETIP grant, which has few restrictions. But one thing we had discussed was potentially using some of the select board contingency fund, because there's plenty in there, and it would just give us the flexibility to use that money even for the, for a portion of the Island Institute Fellow, or if we wanted to keep Ellie longer, if she was interested, we could potentially fund her directly. So I'd be inclined to use the selectmen's contingency and keep the ETIP money where it is. That's my recommendation.
And I'll read the email, because I just realized I did not send it on the entire board. It went to Aldrich, Vika, Carol, and Bob and Julia Brule from Sarah Millnet. The email was dated May 29th, so about 5 days ago. It says, hi Bob, thank you for checking in. Host sites have been getting a range of funding that fits within their budget from $5,000 to $10,000. We are indeed fundraising for the remaining gap of about $20,000, which remains after the majority of host sites have contributed. So any amount that the town, Shebig, can give would be very helpful and go to closing that gap.
So I would recommend we think something like 7,500, which is kind of, well, Vika has another idea, so before I say that, go ahead.
Contingency, there's $7,300 left.
No, what did we spend it on?
The Jenks Road proposal.
How much is it?
7,300.
That's what I was
$7,300 is what the select board has to work with for contingency.
So this fiscal year ends at the end of June, is that correct?
June 30th.
So that would mean no contingency money left for the new board to spend in the balance of June?
Which it will be 2 weeks.
Not likely, yep, so, okay.
I'm willing to take the chance.
So is that a motion?
So I'd like to make a motion that we spend the balance of the select board contingency fund of $7,300 for the, to apply it to the GP cog fellow.
Is there a second? Second by Eliza. Discussion? I'll just say that if ever there was an expenditure that's resulting in a ridiculously high return on investment, this is it. The work that young woman has done for this town has been stellar. And I think it can continue. I think she has weathered this politically driven whiplash of what is supposed to be a positive mentoring sort of position, as well as any human being could, and she has maintained a good attitude and has maintained productivity throughout the entire time. Most recently with the work that's happening this weekend with Team Rubicon. So I'm absolutely in favor of the motion. Other comments from the board? Comments from the public? Sure.
I second that Ellie's work is, I think, unbelievable, and she's probably 20% on ETIP. And we also have this bit of money from the ETIP NRL that was grant funded November, I think. So we could, whatever JPCOG is asking, we can probably match the gap relevant to what Ellie's been contributing to ETIP.
Yep.
So
if they're asking for a minimum of 5 and we're offering 7,300, so I think we're probably good with that.
All right.
And I would say that's in the ballpark of what Long Island's gonna give them 62 or something,
Okay.
so. And, you know, there's money around. I know that GPCOG has money from other sources,
Yeah.
so and also if we decide down the line to give them more money, they won't say no.
Right.
I just think we should, if there's an opportunity for Ellie to stay on,
Yes.
because some of her projects will be continuing, I'd like to explore that.
Okay, since you brought it up, I did ask her yesterday that this is not anything official, this is simply brainstorming. Do you have any interest in sticking around? And she said, I said, do you want to go home to Kansas? And she said, I do not want to go home to Kansas just yet. And she said, I would like to not move again at the end of 1 year. I might want to move again at the end of 2 years, but I'm certainly interested in sticking around if that opportunity presents itself. That was not a commitment on her part, not a commitment on my part, just a discussion. It was a very positive discussion. So there's a motion on the floor. Any other public comment? Seeing none, motion on the floor, it's been seconded, all in favor? Okay, unanimous? All right. Moving on, other business. Does anyone have other business to bring up tonight? Mika, anything?
I just wanted to let people know, well, first of all, Team Rubicon's here as of Friday. Doesn't look like the best weekend, but we're going through with it anyway. They're pretty, they're very committed. Kent is coming out from the Maine Forest Service, and, we can use the food donations for Saturday night when we have a meal, if anybody's inspired. I'm not quite sure. Ellie wasn't really sure where that stood, so we're gonna be going grocery shopping tomorrow. And I do encourage the select board to, join us for dinner on Saturday night, where Kent is also gonna talk about wildfire mitigation to some extent. And,
Have we publicized that?
oh yeah, we got a postcard in the mail.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It was in the calendar, so, yeah. And we'll put it on the should-be.org website, but, we're trying not to, there's something every day, so we're.
Right.
So I just wanted to remind people of that. The other thing is, we did get some funding through Cascade Spray Project to start talking about coastal resiliency in terms of even land use ordinances, and that relates to the shoreline stabilization kinds of projects where we really are we're seeing quite a few applications, and we don't really have a good system for managing those, but also getting the town to start thinking about, should we be restricting development in, the 100-year flood zone, those kinds of things. Other communities have made moves in that direction. So this is really just to start thinking about it in preparation for the comp plan. And so there's a community workshop on the 19th, which is a Thursday in June. And it's meant to be just a kind of a relaxed conversation, sort of getting some feedback from people, what they're concerned about, what they don't want to see, and that will be facilitated by people from FB. And I just wanted to remind people that that's happening. We did tell the planning board, I hope they come to that workshop.
I'm sorry, who's the workshop with?
It's with FB Environmental as the facilitator. It was part of a grant that we got from Casco Bay Estuary Project to look at coastal resiliency in terms of land use ordinances.
And is it June 7th?
June 19th.
June 19th.
Careful, Juneteenth.
Juneteenth.
And what time?
Okay.
It's 6 o'clock, sorry.
You'll send us.
It's on the town website right
Okay.
now. Yeah.
And here at the hall, I assume.
Here at the hall.
Okay, other business,
I have one.
please.
I would just like to revisit my bold idea of blocking off some access.
Oh, yeah.
I think as a road commissioner, I have the authority to do that within the town right away. But I would like to at least raise the discussion and see where the board would want to take that.
So what are you proposing at Jenks? Because are you proposing just the cut through the dunes, or are you proposing adjacent to Jenks Road?
I am proposing the town take the direction of cutting off access to the road that that runs through private property, that is now blocked off by Audubon, and encourage the use of the town right away.
Yep.
And then I would recommend at the same time doing the same thing. So whether they're large boulders or whatever, that's something I can figure out at Public Works. Doing that in front of the stream on the town right away down at Chandler's.
Yep.
To protect both of those areas because they are protected.
Yeah, can I propose it, especially the one on Jenks Road, that it's known with signage or something that this is a town effort, not a private property owner effort.
That's why in part I would like to do them both at the same time to let the community know and make the stand that this is a municipal decision and it's being done to two areas that the town recognizes are protected, and people continue to abuse that and to make it impassable ultimately.
I don't think we need a motion, we just need a sense of the board, is that correct?
It's really up to, like I said, I think within my purview as the road commissioner, I have the authority to do that, but if the board wants to make a motion to show on record that there is the support from the board, then that's fine, but I'm also happy to take the heat for it.
I wonder, I completely agree with blocking off that access through this sand dune at Jenks Road for so many reasons. When it comes to Chandler's, that area down to the right, I have two concerns for that. One is if there's a rescue that needs to be performed, it would be so difficult to get somebody out through the path from the upper parking lot.
You would still be able to back down the ambulance all the way down to
Okay,
the
so
stream.
you're talking about putting it at the stream.
I'm putting it right at the end of the road where the stream starts essentially.
That's fine.
To make it so nobody can drive a vehicle of any kind through the stream.
So
And I
parking,
don't anticipate the ambulance would make that attempt.
so parking will still be allowed down there?
Correct.
Usually you can fit two cars.
Yes, it wouldn't be
And that's-
blocking the parking from the top. It would be blocking access to the beach by a vehicle blocking the stream.
The rocks would be right in front of the stream.
Correct.
That's such an important place for people going to the beach with limited mobility.
Yes. But
Nice.
people shouldn't be driving through that
Well,
street.
You're
people with
absolutely
limited
right.
mobility should not be going across the stream. They should be going across the area that we built for people with limited mobility on the other side of the
It's,
park.
it's not the people with the mobility that abuse that
I
and
know.
drive through something
I
that's
know.
protected, so.
I know.
Okay,
Yeah,
anyone
thank
care
you.
to make a motion regarding these proposed located boulders? Carol?
I make a motion that we authorize the road commissioner to take the steps necessary to prevent vehicle access to the protected, the dune area on dune area near Jenks Road and stream area on Chandler's Cove Beach.
Is there a second? Second by David, second by many people. Okay, discussion from the board? Discussion from the public? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous.
Nice road commission.
Okay. Other business? All right.
Can I make just one more suggestion?
Sure.
Just to point out that this is the last meeting for this board, so thank you for your time, and next meeting will be a new board.
Okay, thank you for that. Communications. Any, other than Mr. Oderta's email, I don't have any to report.
Everything that I've shared today was as a result of the communications that I've had.
Yeah. Carol?
I've heard from Lila, and I'm honestly trying to remember the other person, expressing concerns about the stabilization project down at, on Sandy Point, and asking, was the town planning to do anything at the planning board meeting, say anything, and we did submit a letter asking the state to the DEP to review that application closely, but we didn't object to the project or anything, and the DEP did permit that project. I will say that several of the state agencies are not happy with that decision, but I just want to bring it up because a couple community members did ask me if we, are planning to say anything, so.
And that hearing is?
Monday.
Okay, well, it wasn't on the agenda. I wouldn't think we could make a motion to.
Well, I'm just letting people know that
Yeah.
that's on people's minds, so.
Yeah, okay.
I am in communication, and I think there needs to be a further follow-up with Inland Fisheries and Life, asking that we potentially receive a statement from the Maine Geological Survey and Inland Fisheries and Wildlife relative to whether they feel like, probably not the Maine Geological Survey, Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, relative to the protected birds and what if there is an impact to that for that project.
And I believe that is one of the criteria.
Is that the project, or would that be construction? So, there's sort of two questions. One would be, does that change the picture for the project? And the other one would be,
Time of construction.
time of construction.
The answer that I've received, and I have not received anything in writing, is basically that the people that I spoke to don't know enough to be able to answer as far as the project overall. The Audubon didn't say and couldn't say that these birds being here makes it so this can't happen. That's not.
That's an item.
The impact could be more or less relative to construction if it were to be passed. The other aspect is when the areas are then become a designated nesting ground, there is a process that doesn't automatically happen when they start nesting. If that process starts within the state, that could potentially have an impact of similar to, the impact that now the Hook is seeing relative to any kind of construction being within a time frame or being not allowed. So those are the things that I'm hoping could be provided to the planning board, because that's information that I know they're curious to have for their discussion on Monday.
There's a variation on that question that I would propose gets included in the IF&W conversation, and that is, will the presence of that finished project have an impact on future nesting of that particular bird in that particular location? So it's not just during construction, but 5 years from now, wraparound effect, all those kinds of things. just so that ideally the planning board has that information.
Yeah, and Audubon was looking into providing me further information because the answer was really, we don't know. These birds haven't nested in this space with this circumstance, with this environment. So.
Okay. Other communications items? All right, seeing none, item 8, to approve the minutes from May 21. Is there such a motion?
Okay, control, Mr.
Motion by David to approve the minutes.
Sure.
Is there a second? Second by Richard. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Minutes are approved. Items to be placed on a future agenda. What I have written down is the SHIP grant for the pilings that were the town responsibility that we will eventually get billed for by the state. So to have an agenda item relative timing-wise to when that grant rolls over and becomes available to us again, is that correct? Okay. And then also a future workshop with the facilities committee relative to the public safety building situation and to discuss with the public what are the needs and what are potential solutions.
So I would also add to your list that you'll be passing on to somebody a workshop on parking late July.
Right.
Stonewall Park.
Stonewall Park. Well, who
Just
knows,
keep it
maybe
there.
all the
Bennett's will need to be talked about, but Bennett's will need to be
And you
talked about.
said late July?
Well, that's what, so we don't forget.
Right,
We don't
okay.
get to September 1st and look, whoops.
Okay. All righty. Okay. I would entertain a motion that we enter executive session pursuant, blah, blah, blah. Is there such a motion?
So move.
Pursuant to what?
Pursuant to MRSA 6A personnel.
Second by Carol. All in favor? Thank you. Okay.
This is a lot of work, guys.
I have a,
Yeah,
There's
you
there's a
get to go
pot of
home.
gold at the end of the rainbow.